Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the event How Gen Z is Shaping the Future of Business. So my name is Diana and I'm head of global partnerships at Moonshot Pirates and also moderator of today's session. So we're really excited to see everyone here today joining us. And we hope each of you are safe wherever you're joining us from. So as most of you probably know, this event is organized by Moonshot Pirates, and we're a global community of young change makers between the ages of 14 to 19 that are making the world a better place with their own projects. So we empower young people since 2019, and today we decided to take a next step and invite our young change makers as well to empower companies and share their opinion with you here. And today we're going to talk, as you probably all know, about the importance of Gen Z voice for brands and companies from the perspective of innovation and sustainability, and also how the innovation and sustainability trends are fueled by Gen Z in organizations. And for that, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Jeff Fromm. Jeff specializes in innovation and branding, focusing on consumer trends and sustainability strategy. He helps companies reimagine innovation practices, brainstorm new marketing opportunities, and connect this to their sustainability plans. Jeff is a top-ranked professional speaker on topics of youth marketing, consumer trends, and innovation. He published 5 research-based strategy books that sold over 50,000 copies, including the latest book, The Purpose Advantage 2.0. Jeff also wrote more than 300 articles for Forbes on topics in marketing, innovation, and sustainability, and led the first public study of millennials as consumers in a large-scale research partnership with the Boston Consulting Group. So we'll now start the keynote, and for that, I will leave the stage to Jeff.
Well, thank you. I'm grateful that I get the opportunity to share thoughts with all of you from Bangladesh to London to Vienna and everywhere else. It's awesome to be here. Just a little bit of what Deanna did not share. Before I was a professional speaker, I was a backup tree in my elementary school musical. So how does a backup tree become a professional speaker? It was because I ended up doing the first large-scale study of millennials as consumers in 2010 and 11 with the Boston Consulting Group. One thing led to another, and I wrote this book, Marketing to Gen Z, which many of you could probably talk about better than me. So I'm not going to go down that road with you. I will say one of the things that I found really interesting in research that's related to the discussion we're going to have is around the fact that most of the major trends we see in sustainability and innovation are fueled by youth culture, by Gen Z, by young people. And when we looked at the research, we saw an inverse correlation between interest in sustainability and innovation and age. And if we looked at the data longitudinally, we'd see a huge tailwind from 2010 all the way through the current day around sustainability and innovation. So I'm going to go through my keynote. Hopefully it's all on the screen and being shared properly now. Yes? Let's make sure. Great. Okay. So I think you probably recognize this. Where are we? Put it in the chat. Come on, people. Don't be bashful. We're in a grocery store. And a grocery store can be a pretty competitive place. And brands are competing for consumers' attention and share of stomach and wallet. At the end of the day, in this grocery store, we don't find consumers with the spreadsheet who are going down the aisle and looking at the brand's innovation score, the brand's flavor score, creating an Excel algorithm to measure price per ounce and sustainability and flavor and innovation and saying, this is the brand I want. That's not how consumers buy. You win them over with their heart, sometimes with their mind, and then they make a purchase. And if you have a strong brand, you build an emotional connection, you get a small price premium, and your brand wins. In fact, if you have a strong brand, it needs to be rooted in purpose, sustainability, and innovation. In fact, if we were in the same grocery store and I took you to the detergent aisle, in the US certainly, I don't know globally, you'd find an orange box. That orange box would be Tide. And Tide is one of the strongest, most recognized brands on the planet. So how is it that a less recognized brand that charges 10% more at shelf has so much momentum? That brand that brand is seventh generation. They have a purpose advantage. They innovate around sustainability. In the case of their brand, they lean into environmental justice. That's one path in, not the only path. And consumers are willing to pay a small premium for that brand based on their sustainability and innovation platform. Otherwise, consumers wouldn't pay a premium. They'd pick Tide. Tide cleans better, Tide costs less, and it's a better recognized brand. So keep in mind, if you're operating a smaller brand, that you're going to have to outflank, not outspend your competition. Now, what are we looking at right now? I think we could agree we're probably looking at a red screen. And at least in the United States, we have a culture of division. I couldn't get 9 out of 10 people in the US to agree, my name is Jeff, today is Tuesday, and the screen is red. And that culture of division is really important because there is an erosion of trust. Institutional trust has eroded, which is an opportunity for brands that Gen Z will favor those brands that they trust and that innovate along the values they care about. So here are a couple of very popular brands in this country. One is called Ben & Jerry's. Do you guys recognize this brand? Again, feel free to jump in the chat. Many of you might say it's an ice cream brand. I'd say, what? No way. It's a values brand that happens to make ice cream. Chick-fil-A, not a chicken nugget brand, a values brand that happens to make chicken nuggets. And from where I am, they're actually identical twins in the sense that they're both driven by values, both charge a premium price, and both win with modern consumers. Now, you could argue they're very different. Many people would call Ben & Jerry's a liberal brand, and many would say Chick-fil-A is conservative. That's not really relevant to me. What's relevant is they lead with values. They win inside first in order to win outside. And they don't focus strictly on the product they make. They focus on the values of that organization. Now, I suspect many of you recognize that building. And if I were to use the term government and I said, go in your chat, put some adjectives in, go ahead, dump an adjective in the chat. What adjectives come to mind? Did anyone say collaboration? I don't think so. And right here, I have depicted what? Organized religion. And if I said, go in your chat right now and dump more adjectives when thinking of organized religion, what adjectives would you put in here? Go ahead, take a second, dump a few more adjectives in the chat. How many of you went to innovation? So when the pillars of values don't collaborate and don't innovate, and you have an erosion of trust, what you have is the biggest opportunity for brands to take a stand and win market share through values in the history of brand marketing. And when I was speaking very recently, I was talking about the idea of reducing an intention to action gap. So let me explain what that is. Let's say I wanted to live a sustainable, healthy lifestyle. Let's say today I said I'm going to eat healthy. But if I wake up in the morning and I eat things that are full of sugar and bad for me, and I skip the gym and skip my yoga class, then maybe I'm not acting on my intentions. And so when brands make it easy and affordable for consumers, they can act on their intentions. And easy and affordable are really important. Consumers don't want to pay a significant premium or find there's complexity in acting on those intentions. And in Tomorrowland, powered by Gen Z, the most successful brands will identify and close intention to action gaps. And they will lean in to the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals as their North Star. See, these are global goals, not just US centric. And these are goals any brand on the planet can lean into and know that they have centered their purpose around a common language, because these are readily accepted by major brands across the planet. There is a significant myth that purpose and profit are conflicting objectives, when in fact, when done properly, they are absolutely not conflicting objectives. Would seventh generation generate a profit in the absence of an environmental purpose? No, heck no. Consumers would buy Tide. It cleans at least as well, if not better. It costs less and it has higher brand awareness. Would Ben and Jerry's win in the marketplace without a purpose? No. Do they have proprietary milking cows? Heck no. And while I am concerned about the fact that there could have been some monkeys that were harmed in the making of Chunky Monkey, I will continue to eat it because it tastes so good. And the reality is consumers are paying a small premium. Gen Z is inspiring brands to create purpose, values-driven brands that are affordable and accessible to them, and they're willing to pay a little bit extra. And if they don't align to those values, they'll trade down and they'll go to private label, and they will save money because they got to balance a budget. So sustainability, purpose, and innovation are tricky because they are evolving. And what was true yesterday may not be true in Tomorrowland. So we have to evolve at the speed of consumer culture. Who drives consumer culture? Gen Z. I mean, come on. Tech strategy, youth culture drives it. Food, youth culture drives it. The major things that brands tend to lean into, from travel to tech to food, are driven by the inspiration, the hopes and dreams of young consumers. I will also say, however, if you only focus on sustainability, you're going to fail. You have to create a great product or service, and it has to be affordable. If you charge a huge premium, consumers aren't going to buy it. If it's very complicated to do, consumers won't do it. That's inherent in the intention to action gap. So as you think about this, it's yes and. It's yes, your product has to be awesome. Yes, it has to be affordable, and it has to be sustainable. So with that in mind, in my book, The Purpose Advantage 2.0, which I am happy to share electronically with all of you for free, I talk about the concept of a virtuous cycle. Your purpose, which is infused by the UN Sustainable Development Goals in the center of this diagram, the colored circle represents the goals, should fuel culture. And every great organization understands how important it is to win inside. If the people on the front lines of your organization don't love your brand, then you're not going to have great Net Promoter Score. Then you're not going to have word of mouth and word of mouse. And we all know word of mouse matters. You know, if you aren't lighting it up on that modern day Swiss Army knife that some fool called a mobile phone because nobody's calling me back, then it ain't going to matter. Culture creates opportunities around innovation. And great brands understand that they have to evolve, they have to change, and they have to meet need states that are constantly in motion. Then companies earn loyalty, creating a profit. Some of that profit has to go to shareholders, and some of that profit has to go back to the purpose, and that is the virtuous cycle. And the 17 UN SDGs are right in the center when you do the planning. These are a couple of examples. They're US skewed. I'm going to talk pizza briefly. I think pizza is a common language. Mod Pizza, one of my favorite categories is pizza, has managed to build $1 billion brand from scratch based on a purpose around second chances. They hire people who were incarcerated. They screen them, they train them, and they find that their employees are more loyal and engaged than other brands. Do they have proprietary mozzarella? No. They have a couple hundred basis points financial advantage over competitives on things like employee engagement, employee retention, lower cost of recruiting, lower turnover. It's that culture of caring, of second chances that creates advantage for Mod that fuels the pizza revolution for them. And they're not as well known as their bigger competitor. So again, we have a smaller competitor winning at the expense of bigger, better known brands. What's happened is a massive sea change. And it can probably be explained very easily just looking at Patagonia. Most of you probably recognize Patagonia as an environmental steward type of a brand. And they completely modified their strategy. And they went from do no harm to protect and defend. And this type of metamorphosis is because it's important, because the speed of consumer culture change is so great that if they didn't do anything, their purpose would have been less powerful than when they started many years ago. We also see a number of major brands looking to make significant change. The key thing is they have to act on it before they talk about it, or they're going to get tackled for purpose washing by Gen Zers just like you, who are going to check them out and snoop them online before you buy. I've been talking about purpose, and if you were to Google search it, you'd find it's a noun. But what I would also tell you is, if you use it as a noun, you will fail. You need to use it as a verb. You need to take action on your purpose. I will tell you the way I got my start was because I did a Google search on information on millennials as consumers in 2009, and I got junk. And so I tried other searches and more searches and more searches. Finally, I found that the reason I couldn't find any content on Google was no one had done any serious research. Called a friend of a friend at the Boston Consulting Group, convinced her to help do this study and act on it. So as young people, make sure actions come first. If you go look for something, don't be put off when you can't find it. And if you find something and it says it's a noun, don't believe it, challenge it, know that it's a verb, because any brand using it as a noun is going to be called a phony by your cohort. The questions you may want to start with, if you were working to build that brand from scratch: what do my consumers need? What do my employees need? What does the world need? How can I create a more available, accessible, affordable brand that meets the needs of consumers? I encourage companies to consider putting the elephant in the room. What is the big scary thing that no one wants to talk about in order to unlock and reimagine the potential you have to engage consumers? I have briefly talked about the UN goals. It's easy to look for them online. You can read more about them in the book, The Purpose Advantage, which I'm happy to give you free copies of. These are your North Star. Integrating your brand reason to be with one or more of the UN goals is crucial to finding success and creating that virtuous cycle. For those of you who are thinking about this through your own personal lens, you're a teenager, the concept of purpose is probably rooted in this Japanese idea called ikigai. And that is, what do you love? What are you really good at? What does the world need? And can you make some money doing it? And if the answer is yes to all four, I like your ideas and I want to see you change the world. My name's Jeff. I'm grateful for the time we got today. I know it was a short presentation. I'm happy to take some questions before we get into the panel. Be sure and ask for your free copy of The Purpose Advantage. I want to share that with you. Thank you.
Jeff, this was amazing and really insightful. I'm sure right now we're going to discuss it also with the panelists, and I'm sure that the audience already have a lot of questions. And right now I would like to invite our panelists. So we'll start off with Nivena. So Nivena is joining from Austria, from Vienna. And Nivena is in the Moonshot Pirates community for more than 2 years already, and she is a truly inspiring young leader. So Nivena considers herself a lifelong learner, and it would be great, Nivena, if you could just tell a couple of words about yourself right now before we start introducing other panelists.
Yes, hello there. Besides being a lifelong learner, I also consider myself an optimist. And I just love to learn everything and anything. So reading is one of my hobbies, and speaking languages is also a great thing for me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nivena. Now we're moving on to Sumaya. And Sumaya is joining from Dhaka, Bangladesh. So Sumaya is a Moonshot Pirate Young Advisor from Dhaka, and she's a young activist, published author, and educator who is passionate about making education more inclusive and accessible for all. Sumaya, so if you would like to introduce yourself just in a couple of words.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sumaya. I'm so excited to be here. And Jeff, your presentation was absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to discuss more about it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sumaya. So Benjamin is joining us also from Vienna, Austria. And Benjamin is a creative web developer, passionate about tech, nature, and entrepreneurship. He previously founded an e-commerce business with another Moonshot pirate. Benjamin, can you just maybe tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yes, hi, my name is Benjamin. I'm glad to be here today. And yeah, like you already said, I think this is a very interesting topic also for me, since our e-commerce business was also like founded in a very close partnership with older generations. So we have a very interesting intergenerational exchange here.
Perfect. And Charlotte is joining us from the UK. She's an aspiring engineer, entrepreneur, and actress. She's particularly passionate about tackling agricultural poverty through a device she's designing with her friends. Charlotte, could you please also give us some brief introduction about yourself before we go to the panel discussion?
Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte. Thank you so much for the introduction, Diana. I'm so excited to be speaking and discussing with you guys here today. I'm super passionate about tackling agricultural poverty, promoting positive body image, and also about cool space technologies.
So after the keynote, I'm sure our panelists already have some questions.
Sure, thank you, Diana. Hi, Jeff. So, do you think that Gen Z have the power to solve global problems such as climate change and discrimination through our consumer trends and desire for authentic, purpose-driven brands?
Charlotte, that's an awesome question. I think the answer is a resounding yes, because when you spend your money with brands whose values align to your own, you're fueling their purpose, profit, motive, right? That virtuous cycle. And by changing your behaviors and closing that intention to action gap, there's no doubt that many of the problems that government and religion have sort of kicked to the curb and ignored, sadly, will be tackled by brands who are being influenced by young people. So I'm excited that you're participating and excited that you're thinking about the challenges that you've described.
Thank you so much for your question, Charlotte. And thank you, of course, for the answer, Jeff. So maybe Nivena, do you want to go next with the questions?
Yes, and feel free that maybe Benjamin or Sumaya, I know you have some projects, you can maybe also answer that. My question is, what can corporations do so that people from different generations can thrive and work together in the best way in a company?
Well, there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to your question. There has been a lot of conversation around what I'll call culture clash, as the expectations for young people include both monetary and non-monetary considerations. So the notion that young people don't care about like money and they're broke and living in their parents' basements, that's crazy, okay? Like just absurd, okay? But I think there are a lot of young people who want more than just a good job with good benefits. And they want to feel like they're valued, and they want to feel like their company is trying to make a difference, which includes making a profit and taking actions to make the world better, which means that many young people, not everyone, will have the privilege to choose company A over company B based on values. And I say that because not everyone gets that privilege, but when you're well educated and you're smart, a lot of times you're going to get more than one option. And so then, and the options might have similar salaries and benefits. So now you get to decide whose company's values matter most. The culture clash issue is a little complicated in that there are a lot of people who grew up in a different era, an era where sustainability and innovation were less important, an era where this didn't exist, okay? And so they worked for long periods of time with the same company to move up the ladder. But the whole notion of loyalty is unfairly cast as an employee issue when in fact it was companies who oftentimes broke that chain years ago with mass layoffs when there were economic downturns. So it's a complicated question, and maybe someone else would like to tackle it as well.
Yeah, I think great question, Ivana, and I would like to add to it. I think a great way like corporations can thrive together with young people is to like sort of take a chance on them and give them maybe like this responsibility or room to be creative in maybe projects or in their work. And I think you can really get some like innovative ideas and good results out of this just by giving young people like this enough responsibility and not restricting them from the start. Yeah.
Most definitely. I think that's a wonderful question to begin with, Navena. One thing that I discovered during quarantine when I was like sitting at home, bored out of my mind, and all the way down in my Instagram feed was a lot of courses that big companies were offering, such as like Google had like a digital marketing course that I personally took a part in. So companies that got like offered these kind of courses or mentorship programs. I know Moonshot Pirates has an amazing mentorship program. These can like help young people like us gain a lot of skills, soft skills or hard skills, which we can use in the future for even our own initiatives. So personally, for me, I have my own initiative where me and a few of my other colleagues, we help sex workers in Bangladesh break the chain and start their own businesses. So making that transition, we had to offer them vocational training just to like help them build the skills and career transition. So these types of courses really helped me to identify what I could provide them with. And that was an amazing way to learn, like just online, going to Coursera or FutureLearn and just downloading courses and learning from it.
Thank you, Sumaya. This is also an amazing insight. And I'm thinking,
what an amazing thing that Sumaya is doing in Bangladesh. Congratulations, Sumaya.
Exactly. I think even listening to our panelists here, we're going to learn much more about how Gen Z is actually going to change our future. This is amazing what you're doing. Yes, for sure. And I would like to then ask also, Nivena, what makes you trust the company?
So for me, it's two things. One thing is also what Jeff has on his t-shirt, which is purpose. So if a company has a real purpose, a why, I think that's part of the success that they have, because then people can really identify with the brand, with the company, and with the products. And the second thing is being honest and transparent. So really being truthful to what you share with your customers, and also being transparent in all the steps you're taking. And I think that this is especially important when companies make a mistake. I think in these situations, it's especially important that they are really transparent and really honest and really share with their community what they do to improve this mistake. And I really liked what Jeff said also with this act before you talk about it. And I think that's really important that companies act before they advertise their good cause. So yeah.
Adding on to Navena's one, like I also have like two things I look for. I'm not going to lie. The first thing is definitely packaging. If it's like really aesthetic looking, I really want to buy it. Like maybe bright colors like yellow, like Jeff's t-shirt is amazing. That caught my eye. And the second thing, just like supporting Navena, like if a brand is really honest about what they put in their ingredients, if they're sustainable, if they're clean. I know different people have different ideas of what clean means. Clean like makeup, in terms of makeup, food. So if it resonates with me, I would definitely purchase it more, and it's innovative for me.
And I think also being inspirational. So when you see the brand, when you interact with the brand, feeling inspired. That's also something.
Thank you so much for your answers, Nivena and Sumaya. There's also another question in the chat from Chris Kronig, which also fits to this topic that we're discussing right now. So he's curious about whether any Gen Z on the panel have picked out companies that they consider false in their delivery of values and purpose-driven.
For me, it's Nestle. Just because they kind of try to become greener, but all that they do, in my opinion, is just greenwashing. And the same with Unilever. So those two companies I cannot cope with.
I'm curious why you call out Unilever. Is there something specific one of their brands did, or?
No, maybe also because they're so huge and they're buying all those small brands. And I feel like when such a big corporation buys all those small brands that are really true, that try to stay true to their purpose, I'm usually afraid that such big corporations can hurt the true purpose of a small company.
Thank you, Nina.
Thanks.
I think whoever asked the question really wanted us to be put in the spot. We appreciate that to some extent. But just to be on the safe side, I absolutely love Navena's answer. And I think for me, it would definitely be Tesla. There was like a lot of commotion recently with like Tesla, with the working hours, especially. I think the way that a brand treats their like workers is really important to me. Like human decency. I think Elon Musk, he had like a leaked email where there were like no offline, like workers had to come to the office, no offline work, and like each like office worker had to work like 40 plus hours a week minimum, which is crazy to me if you're wanting to live like a balanced life. Especially, I know for us Gen Z, like a balanced life is really important. Especially for me, I want to do yoga, go on a walk, spend time with my cat. So that is really unethical in my terms. So I would not, even though Tesla goes on like saying sustainable and using green energy, but I would think twice before supporting a brand like that.
So we can move on to the next question, which is looking at the perspective a little bit different from Rick Bunter. And he asked that he wanted actually to know what companies the panelists would like to work for if you could choose.
I'm curious how many also want to work for themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. I can go first. I definitely want to work for the like I want to go into policy making. I'm actually working with the government of my country with policymakers to start like to draft reform matrix in the education sector. Bangladesh recently is going through an education education structural change. So me with a lot of young people are taking it like an extensive part in doing that. So maybe future prime minister, maybe, you know, hints if anyone's recruiting. But definitely I would love to work for a company that values me as a person, my interests. Maybe someone who has like paid holidays. But for sure someone who really holds the same morals as me and values.
So purpose is important here as well. Charlotte, did you want to?
I'm just like on thin ice. I don't want to name a company because then in the future, you know, not going to the rival, just on thin ice right now.
Yeah, sure. Samaya, you're so cool. Like, hats off to you for all of the incredible work that you're doing. Oh my gosh, I would love to chat with you later. In terms of the question, so recently I've been looking into this brand called Canva, and I'm sure lots of you guys probably know what that is. But Canva was founded by a female entrepreneur who loved graphic design, and she found that there was no kind of website or platform or tool for people with no background in graphic design to make really cool like marketing, like anything, you know, graphic posters, presentations, whatever it is that you want. So I personally really look up to her because not only because she's female, I think she's also a woman of color, but it's just she failed quite a few times. I read that she pitched her idea to 100+ investors in Silicon Valley, and no one said anything to her until that one person said yes. And then now Canva is like a $40 billion company and brand. So that's a company that I think I would really love to work for because of the leadership, their core values, I think really align with mine. So they provide that employees with lots of freedom to be creative, like Benjamin was saying, that responsibility to take action and have a positive impact on the world. But at the same time, like Jeff was suggesting, I would love to start my own company and become my own entrepreneur. And I think the reason for that is I really want to create a positive impact on the world. And I just think, whilst it's challenging, being a self-made entrepreneur, you have the freedom and that extra responsibility to create something great in the world.
Thank you, Charlotte, for your answer. And actually listening to the answer regarding the companies that you would like to work for, I can see already some of the characteristics probably that would be definitely the ones that make Gen Z so different from the other generations. And I wanted actually to ask Jeff, if you could tell us maybe what makes the Gen Z, in your opinion, so different from the other generations.
Okay, so when we did the study around Gen Z, we took a large sample of Gen Z against other cohorts, and I think there were a couple of main things. First is they are financially, at least in the US, and my study was US centric, financially interested and motivated. So a lot of people think like young people don't care about money. It's like, no, not so true. And reasonably savvy, and probably the next great pragmatic generation. So pragmatic was a major theme that came through in the research that went into this. Ultimately, for some anyway, the big surprise probably may be their high appetite for sustainability and innovation, which is not unimportant to other generations, but their interest in it is so much greater, and their willingness to try new things when they can afford it, when it's easily accessible, from brands who lean into those values, which could be a really big game changer if you think about the sort of opportunity for smaller brands to create to create engagement with them. There's a European brand, Tony's Chocolonely. How many of you have heard of Tony's Chocolonely? Few of you, not a lot. Okay, so like it's a very disruptive brand, European, tough to get into the US market when you're a small brand, but they're really trying to disrupt the supply chain, end slavery in terms of the people who are picking cacao beans in West Africa for no money. And so like brands like that get traction now. And I think, again, when it's affordable and accessible, brands that are reimagining their business model around values create advantage. And I don't think the trends are a big secret. It's more about figuring out how to really look at the business model. Because if you make this a marketing thing, this group will sniff that out and they'll call you purpose washing or greenwashing.
Thank you, Jeff. And also there's another question that would actually follow up on the previous one. Would you say minimal and simple has become a Gen Z characteristic?
I think it's a common characteristic across generations. I think it's inspired by Gen Z versus unique to Gen Z. And I think it's important to call that out because I think a lot of people get their inspiration from young people. And so I think that one transcends more, but it's fueled by.
Thank you so much. I think the next question is definitely for Benjamin. Would love to know, so the question is by Victor Aramos, would love to know from your individual perspective on how you overcome challenges as a Gen Z running a brand or a startup business.
Well, one thing that has worked really well for us and that we are really thankful for is that we had the connection that we ourselves made. So not through our parents or something, we actually made a connection to a company who is in the wholesaling business of products, and a very close connection to the executives of this company who have become to us like sort of mentors to guide us on our way. And that has been like really valuable for us because they could prevent us from making mistakes that would have been maybe dangerous for us. And so I think just having this exchange where you have on the one side people who are very experienced in their field, and on the other side people who might bring in fresh ideas, can be really like good for both sides, and yeah, help overcome challenges.
Thank you, Ben. And there's also another one for you then. Do you think Gen Z can impact business innovation? And if you think so, then which way, how?
Well, I think first of all, Gen Zs are like the generation of digital natives, right? So we are fluent in things like social media or social networking. And those are things that are very valuable skills for many companies that they pay consultants maybe a lot of money to. So just by having Gen Z people in your teams, they can drive innovation because for them, those topics are very natural, and they're naturally good maybe at those things because they grew up with it.
Thank you, Ben. And also as a follow-up, the question from Marco to Jeff, do you think companies can afford to ignore working closely with Gen Z in the future?
Well, statistically, it would be challenging if you're a larger brand to ignore Gen Z, because you're going to need to attract and, most importantly, retain Gen Z if you're looking at your future labor force. And you know, let's face it, we have some Gen Zers here who are teenagers. I have a Gen Z son who's 3 years into his career, and it's hard to find people who have certain skills who can do a lot of the day-to-day work, because then if you only have senior people, all of a sudden it's like, who's going to do all the work that the clients need? And so at his company, sample size of 1, they go out of their way to keep the 24, 25-year-old folks who are highly skilled happy, because without them, they don't have anyone to do the data analysis and be able to get the consulting contracts completed. But at scale, I don't think any of the larger companies is going to ignore this cohort, not just because of their spending power, but also because of their influence. And I told you briefly, these companies that are winning win inside first. So the companies that are winning are going to listen to Gen Z and learn how to incorporate them early into the innovation cycle and the leadership cycle of their company. They're not going to wait till they're 45 years old to put them in leadership roles. I think that's an old school way, and I don't see that working for brands.
Thank you, Jeff. I really hope that they're going to, that all the companies, especially also the big corporates, are going to work with Gen Z.
They have no choice. It's a math problem. You have so many people who are in their late 50s who are retiring, and they need the next generation of workers to power their future.
Yeah. Thank you. Exactly. And also, I would like to ask Sumaya, what, in your opinion, would make a brand innovative?
That's a very good question. For me, in my personal opinion, innovation comes from brand image, brand idea. So creating something new from something existing is really awesome for me. I don't know, during pandemic, if you guys saw the Dalgona coffee trend. I know I was in my house whisking up coffee and warm water, so I hope you guys were. But making something new from something existing, I don't know if a lot of you know, but Dalgona coffee was actually something made started in Busan in 1960s, and it was innovated and marketed by coffee companies and restarted in 2019, 2020, and it was a huge wave. So brands coming up and boosting their sales with something like Instagram influencers is really attractive for me. I think that's really innovative. Another thing is tapping into a niche. I know Jeff mentioned that a lot, he was tapping into a niche in 2009, Googling about Gen Zs. So that is something which if brands focus on, they can even have a lot of growth and satisfy the niche in the market. Another thing is innovative, I think, goes hand in hand with evolving with the changing demands. I know us Gen Zs, we're always on the internet. Our demands change zap, seeing one influencer wearing something. I want that. So when brands like satisfy that, I think that's really innovative as well.
Thank you, Samaya. And I think it could be also fueled by the new technologies, right? So something that would make the Gen Z excited and inspired about the brand. And I don't know, maybe Nivena, do you want to answer that one from our Q&A from Alexandra Stepanians? She's asking, what are the technologies Gen Z are most excited about? So maybe just give us your personal opinion on what are those that makes you excited.
There are so many technologies. I'm not really the technology type, but I think more important than which type of technology is how the technology is used. So for example, AI is super exciting, and there is like a program where you can type in only a few keywords and AI will create a picture out of those keywords. Something that is really amazing. For me, I don't know. And other things would be that I'm excited about is 3D printing, also because it can be used in so many different ways, maybe like creating tissues for the body or just recycling material and creating new things out of old material. Other technologies, I mean, of course, all this hardware may be our laptop or our phones that are getting better by the day, actually, which I find also very exciting. Also, infrastructure and things that are happening there. So, for example, transport, means of transport, that it's getting quicker and quicker and greener also. So those are the things that come to my mind, but maybe the other panelists have also some ideas.
Yes, thank you. Maybe Ben or Charlotte or Smaya, do you want to add anything to this? So which technologies inspire you or make you excited?
I think Nivena like covered a lot. When you mentioned 3D printing, I was like, yes, that's so cool. Because I think in the future, we might even start like printing food. And someone said in the comments, printing houses. And 3D printing is so good for fast prototyping. So I think whenever you're trying to create a product and you want to test it out on the market, like immediately, 3D printing is the way to go. Personally, I love space. I think outer space is so cool. And I think in the next few years, that's going to be a technology sector that we look more into because like humans are curious, right? So the sky is no longer the limit because we have the entire universe to explore. So personally, anything to do with space, I'm very interested in as well.
And this is also for all the panelists. I know the internet is like a huge place. If you like start Googling something, you're in it for at least 3 hours, like doing a research paper or like assignments, minimum 3 hours. So Jeff, when you were like searching up Gen Zs and all that, how did you figure out what was the right type of information, or where did you get the correct information? I know in the internet, there's like a lot of misinformation and like false information. So how did you pick which one was the right one, or what search engines did you use?
So when I first started down the road, I was looking for content on millennials in 2010. When I did this work several years later, it was based on qualitative and quantitative research. And, you know, the intent of it was to look at Gen Z and understand how, in our case, we could have a point of view that was fact-based for brands. And so it was looking at consumer trends. And so in that case, it was not really driven so much by Google as by doing first, you know, discussions with people just like this panel. And then second, by doing quantitative analysis where you compare a cohort of Gen Z against, you know, other cohorts. And let's face it, you know, different cohorts are going to remember different things. I saw one of the people in the chat was from the Ukraine, right? Like Gen Z is going to have grown up in an era where we had this terrible thing happen in the Ukraine. That will define this generation for years to come. Older people will remember, you know, for example, 9/11 in the United States or other things, whereas Gen Z may not really have much of a thought on that because, so generations in many cases are defined by a combination of technology change, culture change, and then major events. And in the book, we tended to look at the data around topics we were interested in, and then compared them against older consumers.
Now I'd like to ask Charlotte, what do you imagine for your future?
So personally, I really want to become an entrepreneur and use my engineering skills to create solutions to world problems. But I think if we take a step back and look at it more generally, I think a future I would want to live in is one where everyone all over the world has equitable access to opportunity. And for me, what that means is we need to start making sure that everyone has food to eat every day. Everyone has a roof over their head. There is no longer any racial or sexist discrimination. No more crime, no more conflict. I think, as Jeff was saying before, the SDGs are fundamental to our success in the future. The SDGs are our North Star. And I think in our future, if we can achieve those sustainable development goals, then we are moving towards a future that has equal opportunity for everyone. And that's one that I would really love to live in.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Charlotte. Does anyone else from the panelists want to add anything to this question, as it is so complex and it's really interesting to hear the perspectives of others as well?
A greener future where we as society learn to live with nature and not kind of besides nature. So kind of bringing nature, for example, more back into the cities, and figuring out how we can incorporate nature more and how we can let nature thrive again.
And I'd like to thank everyone for participating in this session. I'd like to thank Jeff for the amazing keynote, for the answers to the panelists and the attendees' questions as well. It was amazing. And of course, to our panelists for sharing their opinion as the representatives of Gen Z, as our Moonshot Pirates. We were really happy to hear your opinion here in this session today.
I'd like to thank all the amazing panelists who are from all over the world who joined. So really grateful for the opportunity to share the stage with you.
Thank you so much.